Welcome to another episode with your host, Robert E. Hansen, psychic medium, author, and public speaker.
Hi, welcome back. Today I'd like to share a story with you called The Horse Barn. Many years ago, I was doing a reading for a husband and wife. They had come to see me. And normally when I have just husband and wife coming alone and they're a young couple, sometimes I get a sense that there is the death of a child involved. Now, this story happens to have that. So if you're sensitive about that, you may want to jump past this particular reading. But if you are open to listening to what I have to share, I think it may help you quite a bit. They had come here to see me from out of state. I can't remember quite where they were from. I think they were I live here in New York, in the New York State, and they were either from Connecticut or from Pennsylvania, not far away. They were on the Eastern Seaboard. But they come out of a farming culture, a culture where they raise cows and they have horses and chickens and goats and so on and so on and so on. And it's kind of their lifestyle, their upbringing, a little bit more of a rural farm type of a family, and they come in to see me. And, when people come in to see me, I'm very, very guarded about what I let them say when they make appointments with my office. I'm very guarded about what we allow them to tell us. We only allow for the name of the client that I'm going to meet, their first name. We don't even let them give us a last name. We don't want anyone to even hint or suggest that we're trying to look up stuff or find stuff on the internet or something, which we just would never, ever do. But we don't. So that being said, this couple comes to see me, and they sit down, and we're doing the reading. And again, I'm explaining how we do it. And they place their little recorder in front, and we begin the session. And almost out of the beginning of the session, I could feel this terrible angst in the parents. You don't have to go very far to look in the eyes of a woman, or the eyes of a father, but especially the mother. You can see this deep pain that shoots through their eyes. It's almost like little flickers of dark lightning shoot through their eyes. Their heads drop, their faces turn, their hands ball up, their breathing starts to change. The anxiety can be quite high. Now, I've seen this with, older parents and, adults I've read who are in the 70s and 80s, and they've lost a daughter at 45 or 50. It doesn't diminish at all the suffering and the sorrow. But when you lose a child in the very early years, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, elementary school, young high school, it echoes a very, very deeper wound. It rips open the soul much more aggressively. And it can really be unnerving. So this reading had those components to it. So I looked at the husband and I said, when this took place, and at this point they had not told me, nor did I know they lost a child for sure, but I could feel it was coming. And I said, this is maybe one of the oddest deaths that I have ever read of a child. I don't think I've ever read anything quite as unusual as this particular passing. And I went on to say to them, I said, I know you guys come from out of state or come from some, area that I'm not familiar with. I said, it could be, the city, it could be Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, or it could be one at Lancaster, it could be a city in PA, something like that, regular, you work at a machine shop or something. But I said, there was something about the farms, about the horses, about the cows, not that it's just around you, but I get this strong impression that you work or own a farm, something very similar to this. And they said, that's exactly right. We do. We work a farm. We own a dairy farm. It's what we do for a living. I said, okay, because something happened outside of the barn. And they both held their breath. And I looked at them again and I said, this is the death of a child. And they said, yes. And I said, "This is your child?" And they said, "Yes, it is." I said, "Oh my God, oh my God." This baby was coming to me maybe 3 years old, 2 to 3 years old. And I said, "This is going to sound very, very odd, but I have to ask you. I know this is very difficult." I said, "You were both working around the barn, and your child was in the barnyard, around the dogs, around the chickens, playing, like a little 3-year-old, 4-year-old would play. And around that age, I get the feeling they were mobile, running around, throwing bird seed out or something. It wasn't like they were 2.5 or even littler where they really didn't know their way around. This comes across as a slightly older child, maybe 3.5 to 4. And they said, yes. And I said, "This is going to sound very strange." Excuse me. I said, "This is going to sound very strange, but did an animal push up against your son? Like some animals scratch their backs against a barn, or they lean up against a fence, or they're being fed and they push up against each other." And they said, "Yes. Our son was out playing, and one of the cows moved up against him and pressed against him. And when the cow did this, he got caught in the fence and the cow. And the cow did not even recognize as an animal, didn't even sense it, that this child was pinned between the fence, the barn door, and the cow." And when the parents came out, it was maybe 2 minutes, like 2 minutes, you let your child play in the backyard. In that little window of time, they came out and they found their child deceased. And the child was actually killed by a cow who, through no fault of the cow, leaned up against the child who was just playing in the yard, and the cows were moving through. And at some point, somehow, this child's little body got wedged between a barn door near the fence and the cow. And the death came. Now, for those of you who go way, way back and remember the TV show Mayberry, they had Andy the sheriff, and the little boy played by a very, very, very famous child actor. His nickname was Opie. Opie. And I said this to the parents. I said, they're showing me the name. He shows me the name Opie, O-P-I-E. And they looked at me and they said, "No, his name was Odie, O-A-T-I-E, because he always liked to give the oats to the horses. He loved feeding the animals, so he got the nickname Little Odie, or the Oat Man." I looked at them, my head just dropped like a sinker in water, and I cried with them. This little boy was killed, this little Odie was killed, doing what he loved to do, feeding animals. And somehow, some way, he got trapped and he got stuck, and the pressure of a big cow interrupted his life in a moment. From what I understand, those parents continued working in that barn for a couple of years after that, and then eventually sold it off. I've never heard from them again, but I will never, ever forget that this little boy's soul came to me to let his mom and dad know that he died doing what he loved, and his little name was Odie, the little boy killed outside a barn. I'll never forget it. Thank you for listening.